In 43 years on this bench, I have seen liars, cheats, con artists, and criminals of every shape and size walk through those courtroom doors. I have seen men cry crocodile tears. I have seen women fake fainting spells. I have seen lawyers so slippery they could talk their way out of a burning building. But I have never, not once in 4 decades of doing this job, seen a man walk into my courtroom and say, with a straight face and a smirk on his lips, the words that Police Chief Raymond Holt said to me on the morning of March 4th, 2024. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Judge, with all respect, laws like this don't apply to men like me." The courtroom went so silent I could hear my own heartbeat, and what I did next, what I was forced to do, what justice demanded I do, became the most talked about moment in my entire career on this bench. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, do it right now, because what you are about to hear is not just a courtroom story. It is a story about power, corruption, a broken family, and one 67-year-old man named Earl Watkins who lost everything and almost lost his life because a police chief believed the badge made him a god. Stay with me. Every single word of this story matters. It started with a case file that looked routine on paper. Case number 2024 CR 1147. Defendant Raymond Douglas Holt, age 54. Chief of Police, Maplewood County, Georgia. Badge number 0012, 22 years of service. Charge: felony aggravated property destruction, criminal intimidation, and abuse of official capacity. The victim, Earl James Watkins, age 67, retired school teacher, widower, owner of a small piece of land his father left him in 1989, 4.2 acres on the western edge of Maplewood County, Georgia. On the surface, this was a property dispute, a disagreement about a fence line, something that happens 1,000 times a day in courthouses across America. But underneath it, there was something far darker. Something that made my blood run cold the moment I read the full case file the night before the hearing. Let me tell you what really happened. Earl Watkins had owned that land for 35 years, 4.2 acres. Not much, but it was his. His father, James Watkins Sr., had worked double shifts at a textile mill for 19 years to save enough money to buy that land. He bought it so his family would always have something solid beneath their feet. Something no one could take. Earl built a small house on it in 1994. He raised 2 daughters there. He buried his wife there in 2019 under a white oak tree she loved. That land was not just property. That land was his entire life. 2 years ago, a real estate development company called Crestline Properties began buying up parcels across Maplewood County. They were building a luxury resort. The project was worth an estimated $340 million. Earl's 4.2 acres sat directly in the middle of the planned access road. Crestline offered Earl $210,000 for the land. Earl said no. They came back with $375,000. Earl said no again. They came back a third time with $500,000 and a veiled threat. They said if he didn't cooperate, things could get complicated. Earl Watkins, retired school teacher, widower, 67 years old, said no a third time. And that is when Police Chief Raymond Holt entered the picture. Because as it turned out, as my investigation before this hearing uncovered, Chief Raymond Holt owned an 8% equity stake in Crestline Properties, valued at project completion at approximately $27 million. Earl Watkins was standing between Raymond Holt and $27 million. What happened next is documented in police reports, security camera footage, and the sworn testimony of 3 witnesses. On the night of February 9th, 2024, at approximately 11:45 p.m., 2 county-registered bulldozers, operated by men who were later identified as off-duty officers from Chief Holt's own department, rolled onto Earl Watkins' property without a court order, without a demolition permit, without legal notice of any kind. They destroyed Earl's fence. They tore through his garden. They knocked over the wooden shed his father had built in 1971. They dug a trench 6 feet deep across the eastern edge of his property, severing the water line to his house. And then they left. Earl Watkins woke up at 2 a.m. to no running water and his land torn apart. He called 911. The dispatcher who answered worked for the Maplewood County Police Department, Chief Holt's department. No officer was sent that night. When Earl drove to the police station at 8 a.m. the next morning to file a report, he was told by the desk sergeant in front of 2 witnesses that Chief Holt had reviewed the situation personally and determined that no crime had been committed on the property in question. Earl Watkins drove home, sat down at his kitchen table, and called his daughter. He told her, "I don't know what to do. They just took everything and told me there's nothing I can do about it." His daughter contacted a civil rights attorney. That attorney contacted the state contacted my court, and on March 4th, 2024, Chief Raymond Douglas Holt was ordered to appear before me. Now, before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, I need you to stop for 1 second. If this story is making your blood boil, if you believe that no badge, no title, and no amount of money should protect a man from justice, then hit that like button right now and share this video with every person you know. Because what Earl Watkins went through happens every day in this country to people who have no voice. Your share might be the only voice they get. Go ahead. I will wait right here. Chief Holt arrived at my courtroom at exactly 10:00 a.m. on March 4th. He walked in wearing his full dress uniform, every pin polished, every ribbon in place, his badge gleaming under the courtroom lights like he wanted me to see it first before I saw him. He had 2 attorneys with him, not 1, 2, both from a firm out of Atlanta, the kind of firm that charges $800 an hour and hasn't lost a case against a county court in 15 years. He did not look at Earl Watkins when he entered. Earl was already seated in the gallery. He was wearing a gray cardigan and dark slacks. He had a cane, a new development I learned later because the stress of the past month had aggravated an old knee injury. He sat quietly with his daughter Angela beside him. She was holding his hand. When Chief Holt passed their row, he didn't even glance in their direction. And that told me everything. "Chief Holt," I said once he had been sworn in and the charges read aloud, "you are here today facing 3 serious felony charges. Before your attorneys speak a single word, I want to hear from you. Do you understand the charges against you?" He looked at me the way powerful men look at things they find beneath them. That slow, patient look that says, "I'm only here because I have to be, and we both know how this ends." "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "And how do you respond to these charges?" His lead attorney, a tall man named Crawford, rose immediately. "Your Honor, my client maintains that the actions taken on the property in question were conducted under lawful authority, pursuant to a verbal easement agreement dating back to—" "Sit down, counselor," I said. Crawford blinked. "I did not ask you. I asked Chief Holt. In my courtroom, defendants speak for themselves first. You'll get your turn." I looked back at Holt. "Chief, how do you respond?" Raymond Holt straightened his uniform jacket. He looked at me with something close to amusement. "Your Honor, I respond that this matter has been significantly exaggerated. The property dispute at issue involves a legitimate easement, and the actions taken were—" "Chief Holt," I interrupted, "I have read the case file. I have reviewed 47 minutes of security camera footage. I have read the sworn testimonies of 3 independent witnesses. I have reviewed the corporate filing records for Crestline Properties, LLC, registered in the state of Georgia, in which your name appears as an equity stakeholder." The courtroom shifted. "So let me ask you a very specific question. Did you, on or before February 9th, 2024, authorize, direct, or have prior knowledge of the entry of county equipment onto Earl Watkins' property without a court order?" There was a pause, and then Raymond Holt, Chief of Police, Maplewood County, Georgia, a man who had worn a badge for 22 years, looked me in the eyes and said, "Your Honor, with all respect, laws like this don't apply to men like me." The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Someone in the gallery shouted, "Unbelievable!" One of his own attorneys put his face in his hands. I did not raise my gavel. I did not raise my voice. I took my glasses off slowly, set them on the bench in front of me, and I looked at Raymond Holt for a long, long moment, because in that moment I was not angry. I was something far more dangerous than angry. I was certain. "Chief Holt," I said, my voice very quiet, very steady, I want to make sure I heard you correctly, because those words you just said in this courtroom on the record before witnesses are the most consequential words you have ever spoken in your life. Would you like to rephrase them? He didn't blink. I believe this court does not have jurisdiction over actions taken by a law enforcement official in the execution of county duties. His attorney Crawford shot to his feet. Your Honor, what my client means to say, what your client means to say, I said, turning to Crawford, is exactly what he said, and it is now part of the permanent record of this court. I turned back to Holt. Chief, let me tell you something I have learned in 43 years on this bench. The moment a man tells me the law does not apply to him, I make it my personal mission to show him exactly how wrong he is. I then did something I have done fewer than 10 times in my entire career. I called Earl Watkins to stand. Mr. Watkins, I said, I want you to tell Chief Holt directly, not me, him. Tell him what you lost. Earl Watkins rose slowly with his cane, with his daughter's hand still gripping his arm for support. He turned to face Chief Holt. His voice, when he spoke, was the steadiest thing in that entire room. Chief Holt, he said, I am a 67-year-old man. My wife is buried on that land. Her name was Dorothy. She died of cancer in 2019. I promised her I would keep that land in our family until the day I died. Your men tore through her garden. They knocked down the shed her father-in-law built. They cut my water. They did it at midnight when they thought no one would see. He paused. I taught school for 31 years in this county. I coached Little League for 14 years. Some of the boys I coached are on your police force right now. I never asked this county for anything except to be left alone, and you took that from me because of money. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Chief Holt said nothing. Mr. Watkins, I said quietly, thank you. Please sit down. Now, before I tell you the sentence I handed down, and I promise you it was maximum, it was complete, and it was the most satisfying gavel I have ever dropped in 43 years, I need you to do one thing. This is the moment in this story where Earl Watkins needs your voice. Subscribe to this channel right now and leave a comment below telling me, what do you think Raymond Holt deserved? What would justice look like to you? Because this community believes in real justice. The kind that doesn't ask how much money you have or what badge you wear. Drop that comment. Your voice matters. And then stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you about the sentence and about what Chief Holt did in that courtroom when I read it will stay with you for a very long time. I spent the next 40 minutes methodically, carefully, and completely dismantling every legal argument his two Atlanta attorneys put forward. The verbal easement claim, non-existent. No written record, no title documentation, no county filing of any kind. The lawful authority claim, invalid. No emergency order, no eminent domain proceeding, no notice to the property owner as required under Georgia Code Section 2216. The equity stake in Crestline Properties, a direct textbook conflict of interest, undisclosed to the County Ethics Board, undisclosed to his department, undisclosed to the state. Every brick they built, I knocked down, one by one. By the time I was finished with their arguments, Crawford had stopped taking notes. He just sat there with his pen in his hand, not moving. I looked at Chief Raymond Holt. Stand up, I said. He stood. Chief Raymond Douglas Holt. On the charge of felony aggravated property destruction, I find you guilty. On the charge of criminal intimidation of a property owner, I find you guilty. On the charge of abuse of official capacity, I find you guilty. I let those three words land 3 separate times. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Here is your sentence. You will pay restitution to Mr. Earl Watkins in the amount of $385,000, covering full property restoration, water line replacement, replacement of all destroyed structures, pain and suffering, and legal costs. Every dollar within 90 days. Holt's jaw tightened. You will serve 18 months in the county correctional facility, not county supervision, not house arrest, a cell, because the men and women in that facility are there because law enforcement put them there. And you are going to understand from the inside what that means. His attorney started to rise. I held up one finger without looking at him, and he sat back down. You will be permanently decertified as a law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia. You will never wear a badge again. You will never hold a position of public authority again. Your equity stake in Crestline Properties will be referred to the state attorney general for investigation of potential RICO violations. I paused. And one more thing. The courtroom leaned forward. You will write a letter by hand, not typed, not dictated to an attorney, to Earl Watkins. In that letter, you will tell him the truth. You will tell him why you did what you did. You will acknowledge what you took from him. And you will acknowledge that the law applies to you exactly the same as it applies to every single person who has ever stood where you are standing. That letter will be read aloud in this courtroom in front of witnesses before you are remanded to custody. Raymond Holt was no longer smirking. He was standing very still, his hands at his sides, his polished badge catching the light one last time. Do you understand your sentence, Chief Holt? A long pause. Yes, Your Honor. Good, I said, because I want to make something absolutely clear for the record and for every person in this room. This country was built on the idea that no one is above the law. Not wealth, not influence, not a badge, not a title, not 22 years of service, none of it. The law is either equal for everyone or it is equal for no one. And in my courtroom, it is equal for everyone. I picked up my gavel. Court is adjourned. The crack of that gavel was the loudest sound I have ever made in 43 years on the bench. 3 weeks later, Raymond Holt appeared in my courtroom one final time to read his letter. I am not going to tell you it was easy for him. It wasn't. I am not going to tell you it was eloquent. It wasn't. It was halting and uncomfortable, and there were long silences where he had to collect himself, but it was honest. He stood at that podium in civilian clothes, no uniform, no badge, no pins, and he read words he had written by hand to Earl Watkins. He acknowledged the equity stake. He acknowledged the midnight bulldozers. He acknowledged that he had used the power of his office to try to take from a man something that could not be replaced. And then he said something no one expected. He said, Mr. Watkins, my father was a school teacher too. He taught for 28 years. He always told me that a man's integrity is the only thing he truly owns. I forgot that. I'm sorry. Earl Watkins sat in the front row and listened to every word with his hands folded in his lap and his daughter beside him. When Holt finished, he folded the letter, set it on the podium, and looked at Earl. Earl Watkins nodded once, slowly. That nod was not forgiveness. I am not sure it was meant to be, but it was acknowledgement. It was the recognition that the truth had finally been spoken out loud in a place where truth is supposed to matter. The restoration of Earl Watkins' property was completed on June 17, 2024. His fence was rebuilt. His water line was restored. A new shed built to the original dimensions of his father's shed, using photographs Earl provided, stands where the old one stood. The garden with its white oak tree was replanted. Earl Watkins still lives on that land, all 4.2 acres of it. He told a reporter afterward, my daddy always said that land was the one thing nobody could take from you. He was almost wrong, but almost doesn't count. I keep that quote on a piece of paper on my desk. I have been doing this job for a very long time. I have seen the worst of what people are capable of when power goes unchecked, when entitlement grows roots, when a man with a badge or a title or a bank account starts to believe that the rules everyone else lives by somehow do not apply to him. And every single time, I have watched justice correct that lie, because that is what justice is, not revenge, not punishment for its own sake. Justice is the correction of the lie that says some people matter more than others. Earl Watkins mattered. His father's land mattered. Dorothy Watkins, buried under that white oak tree, mattered. They always did. It just took a courtroom to prove it. If this story moved you, if it made you think about someone who was wronged, someone who had power used against them, someone who needed the law to show up and actually mean something, then share this video right now, not for this channel, for Earl Watkins, for every Earl Watkins out there who is still waiting for their day in court. Share it, like it, and subscribe, because this community exists to tell these stories. The ones that remind us that justice, when it works the way it's supposed to, is one of the most powerful forces on earth. And remember what I always say, The law is not a privilege for the few. It is a promise to everyone. I am Judge Judy. And in my courtroom, that promise is kept. Justice served. Gavel down.